As a millennial born in the early 90s, I've watched the LGBT community in America go through some of its most significant changes ever. Being brought up in the late 90s and early 2000s, openly gay people accounted for less than 5% of the population and were used as a social crutch to describe anything heterosexual men weren't confident at. He likes fashion? Gay. He's an artist? Gay. He sees women as emotionally mature beings that are worth more than their bra size? Absolutely, definitely gay. Females made up about 75% of my social structure through much of my early life, and my first glimpses of bisexuality came just before the 2010s. Drag culture was still the dirty secret of gay nightlife, as 200-pound men paraded around in multiple wigs to the tune of Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman. It was countercultural, funny, absurd, and not meant for the general masses. It was exactly correct. Less than 10 years ago, the world had completely flipped on its axis. Gay marriage was legal, finally forcing a type of equality that had been dreamed about since the first brick was thrown at Stonewall. Caitlyn Jenner's public transition landed a reality series on E, and RuPaul's Drag Race went from being a late-night secret on Logo TV to a primetime moneymaker on VH1 and later MTV. But what about LGBT Muslims? People that naturally aren't attracted to the opposite sex or naturally fall outside the lines of gender conformity, yet cling closer to images of Allah and Muhammad than RuPaul and Michelle Visage. Or what about LGBT Christians that would live to be conflicted by the writings of Paul every time they opened up their Bible in the supposedly new world we're living in? I've lived both realities, so let's unpack it. Being queer and Muslim. Islam, somewhat unapologetically, holds absolutely no place for bisexual or homosexual people. To even ask the question would be much like asking the same of traditional Catholics or hyper-Orthodox Hasidic Jews. It's unthinkable, and in Islam's case, there was never any type of historical reformation to challenge it. In the Quran, Muhammad erroneously quotes the prophet Lot as having said, "Indeed, you approach men with desire instead of women, rather you are a transgressing people." Expounding on this, we have the hadith of Abu Dawood, where Muhammad calls for the death of homosexual men where they're found. So what about the 1400 years since Muhammad, you may wonder? Well, not much has changed. Homosexuality is still illegal in the majority of Muslim countries. Those found to publicly violate the law are then publicly executed and made examples. In the West, gay people are often the butt of jokes and after-hours tangents from the pulpit, much like you would have seen from the American right 100 years ago. A tiny minority of Muslims have written think pieces and tried to form think tanks like Muslims for Progressive Values here in North America. They currently operate a handful of cities, are under international attack from headlines and clerics, and don't have enough money to invest in permanent or even publicly listed buildings. LGBT and Christianity. The Christian religion has nearly destroyed itself over the past half-century in trying to deal with the LGBT community, and they've done it all in the most fantastically wrong and self-sabotaging way possible. The movement started in the 90s and is perhaps at its peak today with the Episcopalian Church, the United Methodist Church, the Southern Baptist Convention, the Lutheran Church, and even Roman Catholics have all either split into pro- and anti-LGBT chapters or are slated to do so in the coming years. Every time a church splits, there's a hardline 30 to 40% that will go with the new group, as the majority stays behind, often not understanding the changes that have taken place. Leadership is then placed in a liberal direction, often bringing in female or gay pastors merely for the sake of being female or gay. Fast forward 10 years from any of those splits, and as you can see in the ELCA, or Episcopalian Church of America, there's nothing left but empty pews, geriatric congregants, and a couple token millennials, usually on stage. There is no dating pool for young people to find each other within the church. There is no Bible study that dares to veer into classical interpretation. There's just cultural pacifism and a post-Jewish tradition that removed all of its Jewishness to become more passive. No one respects it, and even LGBT people don't actually want it. What about Paul? The New Testament clearly threatens queer people with hell and reminds them that their life is an abomination on more than one occasion. So what do? Do we look to the traditional Eastern Orthodox Christians as some sort of panacea for not compromising on history? Or is it all pointless anyway, since joining such a tradition would be to admit that part of your identity, one that makes you different, unique, and often ripe for attack, is a repulsive sin that you should hate even more? Isn't that why the new crop of online atheists are so convinced that religion has nothing to offer at all except poor mental health and a contrived sense of community? These are open questions that I don't seek to answer at this time. In conclusion, can one be a bisexual Muslim or a queer Christian of some flavor? Sure. Just like you could be a racial minority that tries to join a hate group. The problem is that most of the claims are nonsensical, and your success in that community will be 100% subjective. You won't be a leader, you won't be taken seriously, and push comes to shove, you're what they gossip about the other 6 days of the week. You're the footnote of every sermon, the silent elephant that sits in the room, and the one that most people hope to not speak to after service. Is that what God wanted for us? And when a religion ensnares itself as the chosen people, why is the LGBT community always the other? Is it not because we're the easiest target possible, and all this Cold War material is fanning the flames of a civil ideological war as we know it? In the words of Wu-Tang, can it all be that it was all so simple? If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, like and subscribe today. Thank you.